Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 1 draft and we'll have a general discussion around some of the players that I'm currently considering. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and if you're excited for the content this season, drop a like on the video. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, we are wasting absolutely no time at all today, jumping straight into the team. And as you can see, I'm currently lined up in a 3-5-2 formation. I do really like the 3-5-2 because this year I think there are tons of really good midfielders. I don't particularly like the forwards, and I think you can get away with just having the 3 defenders, but I don't think it's necessarily the most flexible formation. Last season and the season before, I started the season in a 4-4-2, and I still maintain that if you're going for ultimate flexibility, 4-4-2 is the best formation to have. You can get a good array of defenders that you can move to. You've got a really strong midfield, and you're going for 2 forwards because I don't think there are necessarily 3 forwards that you would desperately want to start the season. So I may well move away from the 3-5-2, but for the time being, I do really like it. I have no money in the bank. I will discuss later in the week whether there is value in keeping a little bit of money in the bank at the start of the season. I don't think it's a necessity, but it can be useful. So if you've built a draft that you really like that has 0.5 million in the bank, by all means keep it there. But for most of my drafts at the moment, I tend to be using the full amount. I have got a list just to the right of me, if you can see me glancing that way, of players that I'm currently considering outside of those in my team, because I know that the comment section will be littered with players that I haven't potentially considered, but I would love to know throughout the videos I'm going through these players, which players have I potentially neglected, which players are you considering that you're not hearing me speak about here. So we'll start in goal, and in pretty much all of my drafts, I've had Pickford. I don't necessarily love Pickford as a pick. The reason that he's currently in my team is he's 4.5 million. He's got very decent fixtures and he tends to make quite a few saves. And when you're looking at a goalkeeper to start the season, you're looking for save points, the odd clean sheet, decent fixtures, and also bonus point potential. So that's the reason that Pickford's currently in my team, but I don't love it and I'm definitely not set on him. I just don't really like many of the £4.5 million options. To my right, I've got the list of Ramsdale at 5 million, who I think is really, really good. But as you can see, I've got Gabriel. I don't want to waste 2 Arsenal spots on 2 defensive options. I do really like Emi Martinez as well. Bit of a mixed bag, the fixtures for Aston Villa, but at 5 million, he is one of my favourite options. I also like Flecken if Raya leaves. So if Raya leaves Brentford, Flecken will be first choice, and he's 4.5. We know that Brentford had very good defensive data last season. They were 8th or 9th for expected goals conceded. So I really like Flecken. And then the other option, as a Manchester United fan, I've got Onana, obviously not currently in the game because that, at the time of me recording this at least, that transfer hasn't quite gone through yet. But I would suspect, based on the other pricing, Onana will be coming in at probably 5 million. You've got Luke Shaw, you've got Bruno and Rashford, but I think you'll probably only own one of Bruno or Rashford and maybe Luke Shaw, so you probably do have a third Manchester United spot free. And if your team looks anything like mine, you might not have Luke Shaw, so I do really like Onana as a £5 million option. And at the moment, if I do go for a 5 million keeper, it probably would be Onana. But at the moment, I like Pickford. Definitely not set on it. Let me know down below who you've currently got in goal. I've got a back 3 at the moment, but there are tons of players that I'm missing because I do think there are a lot of good defensive options. I'll start with Trent. I'll be entirely honest, Trent has been in every single one of my drafts. I've tried to build some fun drafts and I've posted some stuff on Twitter without Trent. But every one of my drafts that I'm considering going into Game Week 1, I have Trent. The reason for that is, yes, he's 8 million, but he has similar data to that of £8 million midfielders, but he gets extra points for a goal, and he gets, obviously, the extra points for the clean sheet too. So I don't see many reasons to go without him. I do think that Liverpool tighten up defensively. They've had a bit of a rebuild in their midfield. He's got really strong data, like I said, about a 0.4, 0.5 XGI. The fixtures are pretty good. Obviously, the opening day fixtures not great for Liverpool, but they're not bad. I just want to go with him. The other reason I like Trent is if you start with the most expensive defender, you can always downgrade. But let's say you start with Luke Shaw as the most expensive defender. How on earth are you going to get from Shaw to Trent if Trent starts to pop off and gets loads of attacking returns? So I like him for the data. Fixtures are okay. I think Liverpool will improve. And also it's a flexible way to start with the most expensive defender. I do have Estepinian as well. Opening 3 fixtures are brilliant for Brighton, and I do think Estepinian will have a cracking season. I think he had 8 attacking returns last year in the Premier League, which is really strong. About a 0.2 XGI, which isn't mind-blowing, but he will tick along as long as he continues to start. I suppose that's the only slight worry. Will he start as much as he did last season? Obviously, Lamptey is now coming back. Will he get a little bit of game time at left back? We'll have to wait and see. But I love Estepinian. Along with Trent, Estepinian has been in every single one of my drafts. So those two, I would say, are very locked. The third spot is Gabriel. Now, I love Gabriel as an option. Really, really good XG. I actually think he had the highest total XG last season just because he played so many minutes and he has decent XG data. We're talking about a 0.1, 0.12 XGI. I love him. I love the fixtures, but he hasn't been in every single one of my drafts because I have had Ramsdale in a couple, but I do want Arsenal defensive cover. I look at the Arsenal fixtures. I look at the way they defended last season, and I want to have at least one Arsenal defender. It's just whether I have it in the goalkeeper position or the defensive one. A lot of people talking about Zinchenko. I prefer Gabriel to Zinchenko because he has better goal threat, but Zinchenko does have slightly higher assist threat and he will play slightly further forward. So I don't mind Zinchenko as an option. I'm personally not considering Ben White. The other options that I could potentially go with, we've spoken about Luke Shaw. I love Luke Shaw. I'm a Manchester United fan. I would love to have Manchester United defensive cover in my team. At the moment, it would probably be with Onana. I would just have to find 0.5 million. The other option I've got is potentially doing one of Estepinian or Gabriel to Shaw, but then I lose the Brighton and Arsenal defensive cover there. So I need to think about which teams I want to cover and how I'm going to do that exactly. I do like John Stones as an option. Man City have the best fixtures in the league over the opening 6 or 7. I just don't think he has a particularly high ceiling. I think he'll tick along with a 5-6 pointer. I don't think he's great for bonus points, but he is playing slightly further forward and City do have great fixtures, so I don't mind him as an option. And then Chilwell and James, if you're in for a bit of torch there and you like that, then go for it. But I just think I want to wait. Are they going to stay fit? And how are Chelsea going to defend under new management, of course? And their fixtures are a bit of a mixed bag to open with. So at the moment, I'm thinking Stones doesn't have a high ceiling. Chilwell and James is a bit of a wait and see. I would love Shaw. I just can't quite fit him in. On the bench, you can see I've got £4 million Bell. We'll have to wait and see over pre-season who looks like the best £4 million defender. I'm not going to go into tons of detail today because I genuinely don't know at the moment. And at 4.5, my favourite current defender is Rico Henry. Of course, if I have Flecken in goal, I could go for Tarkowski, who is probably the best, but I do have Pickford already. There are some other decent options. You could go for a Botman. You could go for an Aston Villa defender such as Mings or Cash if you think they'll start. But for me, I think Henry has the best of everything. Very, very nailed, okay fixtures, and in a very, very decent Brentford defence. So that's the back line. Let's now move into the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and I anticipate this will be the longest section of the video just because I have a 5-man midfield and there are tons of options that I'm currently considering for those spots. Let me know down below in the comments who is your current midfield 5. Let me know how many differ from my current midfield 2. So I'm just going to go through one at a time, and then after I've gone through each of the players and justified why they're currently in my draft, I'll just go through some of the players that I am indeed considering but didn't quite make it in here. So we'll start with Bruno Fernandes. I do think he is underpriced. The issue that we've got is that he's at a very similar price point to Marcus Rashford, who showed absolutely brilliant output and underlying data last season. And in the absence of a proper striker, could be starting through the middle for Manchester United. I actually think he's potentially even more dangerous on the left. But either way, we know Marcus Rashford will get opportunities to score goals. And I guess if you're picking Fernandes because you think he's going to be creative and get some attacking returns, the person he's feeding is probably Marcus Rashford. So that's the difficulty we have. But in isolation, I do still think that Bruno Fernandes is underpriced at 8.5. His data was actually a lot stronger than a lot of people give him credit for last season. We're talking about a 0.7, 0.8 XGI. Of course, he did have a few penalties there too, but I still feel like he will get the opportunity to score goals. He'll get the opportunity in particular to create goals too. He's on set pieces, penalties. And I just feel like he's the talisman for Manchester United. And yes, we have signed Mason Mount, and I do believe Manchester United will play with 2 number 8s now. I don't think that will make him any more defensive because, yes, Christian Eriksen was maybe playing a little bit deeper, but Bruno did still need to have some defensive responsibility. So I don't think the signing of Mount is going to make Bruno much deeper, but we will have to assess that in pre-season. If I get any inclination that Mount is playing more like a number 10 and Bruno is playing more like a number 6, then of course we'll move to Rashford and we'll have to find that 0.5 million. But as things stand, with my current prediction, I still feel like Fernandes will get forward enough. I still feel like he'll get attacking returns through set pieces and penalties. And I really like the way his data looked last season, despite playing quite a few games in a deeper role. I'd love to know down below again, do you own Fernandes, Rashford, both or neither? I've run that poll on Twitter and YouTube. It seems to be that most people have one of them, and it's a pretty equal split between Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. But I would definitely, in my opinion anyway, maybe slightly biased, have at least one Manchester United attacker in your teams. We'll then move on to probably one of the most nailed players in my team at the moment, surprisingly, potentially, is James Maddison. Now, if you followed my content last season and also the season before, you'll know that I love James Maddison. I had him on my Game Week 8 wildcard, and in Game Week 9, when I had that massive rise up to the top 500 in the world, Maddison got like a 19-pointer. So I've got a soft spot for Maddison. I've captained him in previous seasons, and I feel like I tend to own Maddison at the right points. Now, that is a bit of sentimentality bias. That's not necessarily anything to go off of, but I just love him as an option. I love him as a player. I think his underlying data is really strong, and I think Tottenham have been crying out for someone like Maddison for a very, very long time. And I think if Kane stays, with Son having his hernia operation, I genuinely think Spurs will have a really strong start to the season. It's one of the reasons I've looked at potential Kane drafts, which we'll see later in the week. I just love Maddison. So he's been in a lot of my teams. And I think the reason that I love Maddison ahead of Son is mainly the price, because Son is a fantastic option. I would love to own Son. I think that Son, now that he's pain-free, hopefully, and recovered, I think he'll have a really strong season. But he's 1.5 million more than Maddison. And if we look at Maddison's data over the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's strong enough to potentially hold alongside Son. Unless Son has a crazy season like we saw a couple ago, I still feel like Maddison will keep fairly close to him, and for 1.5 million less. So at the moment, I have Maddison ahead of Son. I suppose if I had unlimited budget, just due to the goal threat that Son carries, I may well choose Son ahead of Maddison. But I still really do like these two options. And yes, Fernandes and Maddison are more likely to get you assists than goals, but they do also pop up with the odd goal too. Moving on to one of my favourite players in world football and in FPL, in a similar way to Maddison, is Phil Foden. I know for a lot of people he's a massive troll, but I actually owned him for the perfect stretch last season and sold him just before he went on to get benched repeatedly. I owned him for those 3 or 4 weeks when he got like 19, 11, 13, and then like an 8-pointer. That massive spell between sort of Game Week 9 and Game Week 13. I loved him for it, and I just love watching him play. And I really want to own a second City attacker for their opening 6 or 7. They've got such good fixtures. Haaland is going to be at 200% ownership. What we mean by that is everyone will own our Haaland and everyone will captain him. So basically, you're getting nothing from the City attack. You're not getting any goals, any assists, and I want a piece of that. So at the moment, I feel like Foden's the best option. There's lots of debate around whether he'll play in De Bruyne's role, because De Bruyne's injured, whether he'll move over to the left and play in Gundogan's role now that he's left, whether he'll play in Mahrez's role, now that it looks like Mahrez might be out of favour or being sold, or whether he'll still compete with Grealish on the left. I think the fact that I've just listed 4 positions that he could probably play equally well is a good sign, but it could also be a bad sign that he doesn't actually have a nailed-on position at Manchester City. But I would be extremely shocked if in the 4 or 5 opening fixtures for Man City, Foden doesn't start most of them, just due to injuries and also the players that they're selling to. They don't really have enough options to just continue to bench Foden. So I'm really liking him as an option for the start of the season, and I really like his price point too, because let's say that Foden doesn't do well, when I switch him to a Mason Mount or an Mbeumo, or go down to a 6 million Paqueta, Gibbs White, Ramsey. There are lots of really good options. I like the price point in that even if I do have to sell, I've got an array of other players that I could move to. So for now, Foden is my slightly differential option. I know a few people have him, but he's got quite low ownership. He's got an extremely high ceiling, and he's just an exciting player that I want to own. And he's the one player in the team that does get me excited as a potential differential. Move on to Matoma, who is not a differential, but a lot of people potentially thinking that he could be a bit of a trap based on the way that he finished last season. He actually averaged, I think it was either 2.7 or 2.9 points over the final 10 game weeks of the season. So by all accounts, there was a massive amount of regression. But what you'll actually look at, if you go look into the data in a lot of detail, over the first period of the season, he massively overperformed his expected goals. Basically, he didn't get that many chances, but every single opportunity he got, he scored. Then in the back end of the season, he actually started to accumulate some more chances, but he didn't convert any of them. So what we've basically seen is him overperform and then underperform. I'm hoping what we see this season is performance, and he'll just perform to the data that he gets, and he'll tick along as a £6.5 million midfielder. I think it's incredibly important. Matoma is not a premium. We are not expecting him to get returns every week. We're expecting 1 return in every 3 or 2 returns in every 3, and that would be an excellent value at 6.5, and that's what I'm hoping for the first opening few fixtures, given how good they are for Brighton. Now, moving on to Bukayo Saka, he is probably the only player in my team, along with Haaland and maybe Trent and Estepinian, that has been locked into every single draft. I just feel like he's excellent value at 8.5 and potentially slightly underpriced too, especially when you consider that Ødegaard is also priced at 8.5. I don't think Ødegaard's a bad option, but I don't think he's as good as Saka. They've got similar-ish data, but Saka has slightly greater goal threat. Also, Saka is on set pieces along with Ødegaard, and also he's on penalties too. And I think the addition of penalties is a massive advantage. And Saka took his penalties very, very well last season. I think he'll continue to be on them. And I also feel like Ødegaard too, of course, but I feel like Saka in particular just looks like he's making progression year on year and getting better and better and better. And I feel like this could be an absolutely humongous season for him. And I hope so too. I really like him as a player. And I guess it's just a bit of a personal preference thing as well. I like watching Arsenal owning Saka. I did both last season, watched without Ødegaard and watched without Saka. I find it significantly worse watching Arsenal without Saka. So for me, I just prefer him slightly to Ødegaard, especially considering they're the same price. Martinelli's a tricky one because if Martinelli starts every game, I prefer him to both Ødegaard and Saka and anyone else really in that midfield in FPL. I think Martinelli is that good as an option. I just don't know that he will continue to start every game, especially with Trossard and Smith Rowe. Now Havertz coming in too. I know Havertz won't play on the left where Martinelli plays, but all of these players coming back in, we don't know exactly what Arteta will do. We don't know exactly who he'll favour with game time. And yes, that also goes for Saka and potentially Reece Nelson too, but I think that Saka is probably the most nailed Arsenal attacker still. And I think with penalties, with set pieces, with okay data, I really like him at 8.5. We also know that Saka is absolutely exceptional at home, and the opening fixture is against Nottingham Forest at home. So I want to own him in game week 1, and he's at a lovely price point where if Saka doesn't work out, you can switch to Ødegaard, you can switch to Martinelli, or you could downgrade all the way, and it'll give you a bit of money in the bank to maybe upgrade one of your forwards or upgrade one of your defenders. So for that reason, Saka makes the midfield, and I don't think I'll be going into game week 1 without Saka. I've already discussed a few of the other players that I'm considering. We spoke about Marcus Rashford, of course. I would love to own him. We spoke about Son in comparison to Maddison. I do think he's a much greater goal threat. I would love to own Heung-min Son, but at 9 million, I'm currently struggling to get him into my team. We spoke about, obviously, Martinelli and Ødegaard too. I do really like the idea of getting a Liverpool attacker because I don't have Salah, I don't have Diaz, I don't have Darwin, I don't have Gakpo. And if, like I said in the Trent section, Liverpool start to have a really strong season and we start to see the Liverpool of old, we're going to want a Liverpool attacker very, very soon. So I don't mind the option. Instead of one of Maddison or Foden going for a Luis Diaz, who's also at 7.5 million, I can't quite stretch to the likes of Salah. I just can't justify having Salah in my team. I think if you have one of Salah or Kane, you have to drop Trent. And I feel like Trent is too good of a value. I love lots of other midfielders. I don't see the value at the moment in having Salah. So if I were to have a Liverpool attacker, it would be Luis Diaz. And then there are some cheaper options that I do like. And Mbeumo, of course, in the absence of Tony, could be on penalties and could be playing through the middle. We don't know that for certain, though. It could be Visser, and other players could take penalties. But I would expect that it's probably Mbeumo, and he would at least get very, very good minutes. And he'll probably be the focal point of their attack a lot of the time. So I love Mbeumo, but at the moment, I prefer these other 5. Enciso over Matoma is a genuine option. Enciso's data last year was outrageously good. We're talking about a 0.8, 0.9 XGI. It was over a smaller sample size than a lot of other players, but I love Enciso, assuming he continues to get enough minutes. At 5.5, he could be amazing value, but they have signed João Pedro. They've got Welbeck and Ferguson also to play through the middle. So there are lots of players competing for a few spots at Brighton, and I've spoken to a few Brighton fans and they seem to think Enciso could be a minutes risk. So that's why at the moment I'm currently favouring Matoma, but I love Enciso as an option if you want to go for it and risk that he gets enough minutes. And the final option is potentially Eze. Not a lot of people speaking about him, but he got really, really good attacking returns last season and ended the season very strong. And also is probably on penalties. Whether Zaha stays or not doesn't really matter. It looks like Eze could be on pens. And as a player on penalties, some set pieces with good data and playing in a very decent Crystal Palace team, I do like Eze as an option. But again, I just prefer the 5 that I've got more at the moment. So that's the midfield. Let me know down below. If I haven't spoken about anyone, I do apologise, but let me know. I can drop a comment and reply to you and give you my opinion on that player. Let's now look at the 2 forwards and discuss the team in its entirety. So moving on to the 2 forwards, and I'm not going to waste your time by discussing Haaland. I will be owning Haaland. I will be captaining Haaland. And it is a bit of a shame that we are essentially playing with 86 million and 14 players. I think they probably needed to price Haaland at something ridiculous like 16 or 17 mil. And I think we would have started to have a bit of a discussion because at the moment he's 1.5 million more than Salah and Kane. He's genuinely worth it for me. I know he only just outscored Kane last year, but I still feel like he's worth it. And again, in a similar to what I said with Saka, Haaland actually has room for improvement, which is quite scary, to be honest. And I just feel like you can't really go without him at the moment. Let me know down below if you are brave enough to do so. But I think, yeah, 16 or 17 mil, we would have had to look at maybe going for Kane and Salah and dropping Haaland altogether, which would have been exciting. But at 14, despite it being very, very expensive, I still can't justify going without him. We're also going to discuss Gabriel Jesus here, who I think is an excellent option, but I don't think is necessarily essential, and he's definitely not locked in my team. The reason I love Gabriel Jesus is he had a 1.1 XGI, according to Fantasy Football Hub, last season per 90, which was, I think, only behind Haaland and maybe Darwin Nunez. It could have even been above Darwin. So he's got exceptionally good data. He's playing in a very, very good Arsenal attack with decent fixtures too. The issue with Jesus is that he doesn't convert his chances. So we've seen across the last 6 seasons, 4 of them, he has underperformed his XG by 3 or 4 goals, which is actually a reasonable amount. I think at that stage, you can start to say that that isn't luck. That isn't just variance in the data. That is Gabriel Jesus is a poor finisher. And if you watch him as well, it's not that he gets unlucky by keepers making mega saves. He misses the target a lot of the time. Like, I don't think he's a very good finisher. So it's tricky to own him because it's very frustrating. You'll watch the game, he'll accumulate like 1.6 XG and he won't score at all. And so you've got to be willing to be frustrated. You've got to be willing for him to not get returns every week. But I still feel like at 8 million, despite the fact that he's finishing is poor, just due to the sheer amount of chances he tends to accumulate, I still feel like Gabby Jesus at 8 million is really, really good value. So at the moment, he's in my team. Other players that I've considered, Nkunku at 7.5 could be really good. I'll be honest, I don't watch a lot of other leagues, so I haven't seen a lot of him myself, but a lot of people tend to be quite excited from him. I looked at his data on FB Ref and it looks pretty good, so Nkunku could be a good option, but maybe one to wait and see for me again. I feel like starting with Jesus and moving to Nkunku is easy because you've got 0.5. Starting with Nkunku and nothing in the bank and then trying to get to Jesus, that's very, very tricky. And then the other player that I'm considering, which a lot of people will laugh at, is Calvert-Lewin. He's nailed when he's fit. His data's excellent when he's fit, and he will probably be on penalties when he's fit. Now, of course, the issue is, when is he fit? Not very often. But if he does look good at the start, if he's had a really strong preseason and he looks like he's not injured, I don't have any issues with starting. Everton's fixtures are brilliant to open. He's at 6 million. And like I said, he scores goals when he's fit. So if you want to take a risk there, I don't hate it. I suppose the issue you've got with Calvert-Lewin is if he gets injured early on, yes, you've got like Ferguson at 6 and a few maybe half options at 5.5. But if Calvert-Lewin does get injured and you've got no money in the bank, pivoting to someone else becomes very tricky because there aren't many good players at that price point. So that's something to consider. But for now, I just like Gabriel Jesus as the second striker. And I've just got a third striker. At the moment, it's Archer. Balogun is a potential option too. If he moves away from Arsenal to a Premier League club at 4.5, we'll have to wait and see on that. I don't want to hypothesize too much. But that's the team. That's the 11 players. I'll be honest, I built this team on Thursday. I'm recording this on Sunday, ready for a Monday release. I haven't changed this team at all, bar the bench and the backup goalkeeper. I've not touched the starting 11. I absolutely love it. That doesn't mean that I'll go into game week 1 with this. Of course, we've got a massive amount of time before the start of the season, over a month now. But I just love all of the players in this team. I feel like it's got a really nice balance of explosive players like Foden, Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, Gabriel Jesus. These are the players that can get you multiple returns. It's got a lot of the players that have high ownership, so it's not too risky. It's not too differential. It's got players at a lot of really, really good price points as well. If I was to look at this team and say, where do I think the issues are? Let me put my critical brain on. I don't like the fact that I don't have a fourth defender, because I think there are lots of good defenders, like I said, James, Chilwell, Stones, Shaw. If any of those £5.5 million midfielders pop off, defenders I should say, I'm in real trouble, because I've got Trent, who I probably won't ever want to sell unless he really, really struggles. Estepinian and Gabriel are both great options, plus they're only 5. If any of the really decent looking £5.5 million defenders do well, I'm going to really struggle. I'm going to have to find over $1 million to go from Henry to a 5.5, or sell one of the players that I like in my team and still find money in the bank. So I think that's a major issue. The other issue I've got is I don't have a third striker spot. So let's say that Ferguson starts and Calvert-Lewin starts, and maybe we've got a 5.5 option that pops up, and there are loads of good forwards that start to emerge, and I don't want to sell Haaland or Jesus. I'm in a similar position again when I can't quite move for that. But you can't have everything. And I feel like I want to stack the money in the midfield. There are so many good midfield options. I want the midfield to be stacked. And as a result, you have to sacrifice that fourth defender, and you have to sacrifice the third striker as well. But outside of that, I think the team is really, really strong. I would love to know down below in the comments, what would you rate my team out of 10? Feel free to roast me, but hopefully I'll see a few 8s, 9s, maybe even the odd 10 down there. And also drop your teams down below and I'll rate them too. As you can see at the top of the screen, I have partnered once again with Fantasy Football Hub this season. I was partnered with them last season. I exclusively use all of their data, touch maps, articles, the My Team feature too. As you can see, it helped me to my best ever rank last season, which was just outside the top 10k. If you do want to sign up, there's 50% off during pre-season. If you use my link in the description, it's as little as £2 per month. So it's super cheap at the moment. Now is the best time to do it because the discount does drop throughout the season. And of course, you get the most possible access to all of their different tools too. Their team rating, predicted points, and recommended transfers feature is currently updating. I know they're working hard on it at the moment, and it should be available this week, hopefully. And we'll have a look next week whether the predicted points are pretty decent and what they rate my team out of 100 too. But like I said, let me know down below what you think of the team. Let me know what some of your dilemmas are at the moment, and I will update you with my next draft very, very soon. So guys, there you have it. That is my current game week 1 team. Of course, it will change a lot before game week 1, but I am very, very happy with this initial draft. And I feel like you can build a very strong team just because the pricing tends to be quite low. But there are lots of really decent options. And I have seen quite a few different drafts. So do let me know down below if you've got quite a unique draft that you're very, very happy with. If you did enjoy today's video and you're excited for the content throughout the season, please do 3 things for me. All 3 are completely free. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'd massively appreciate it. Drop a like on the video as well. And as we always say, drop a comment down below to feed those algorithm gods. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.